Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, March 6, 2025. We're already in March. Can you believe how quickly time is flying by? Just a little housekeeping note before we get started with today's blog. This is a really unusual story. I think you're going to be fascinated by it. But remember, tomorrow there is no vid chat. And I want to stress to all the members out there that follow the vid chats, please do remember to keep checking the schedule. We're in that time of the year when weather prediction gets very dicey and can upset our predicted schedule with the threat of severe weather. So keep us in your thoughts and prayers for the weather situation, and keep checking on that schedule because I will give updates there if I need to move or reschedule a vid chat. Anyway, let's get down to it. Before we get to today's story, I want to give everybody a methodological reminder. And my reminder is that I'm going to accept statements in the following article, regardless of the source that they come from, at face value for the purpose of examining or making high-octane speculations and examinations of the argument that is presenting. Because if ever there was an article or story that has all sorts of implications, and I'm only going to be exploring some of them today, this little story that slipped right off the radar is one of them. With all that's going on with Doja and everything else right now with the incoming Trump administration, some of these stories that are of interest to the people on my websites get pushed right off the radar. It's as if all the oxygen is being sucked out of the room. This story comes from the United States Senate Judiciary Committee, and I will post the link on their website. The title of this article is Grassley. That would be U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican senator from Iowa, who is the chairman of the U.S. Senate's Judiciary Committee. Grassley secures Argentine President Milei's partnership in Credit Suisse investigation into Nazi-linked accounts. And I want to read about 7 excerpts from this article, about half of the article. I'm going to read it in order and then comment. Pay close attention. Quote, Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley is welcoming Argentine President Javier Milei's commitment to support Grassley's ongoing investigation into Credit Suisse and its historic servicing of Nazi-linked accounts. This includes providing archival records documenting the use of Nazi ratlines. Ratlines were monetary and logistic pathways that Nazis used to escape justice and flee to Latin America, including Argentina, following World War II. Grassley requested the records in a letter to President Milei, which was hand-delivered to the Argentine president by representatives of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Quote, in order to continue this work, I respectfully request possession of Argentina's archival records relating to Nazi ratlines. This includes records dating to the time before, during, and following World War II. That will help shed light on the planning and carrying out of the Nazi ratlines. The great people of Argentina's support in helping the Senate Judiciary Committee obtain possession would assist the committee in advancing its corresponding oversight of this matter, unquote, Grassley wrote Milei. Now, I'm skipping a few paragraphs here. For decades, organizations including the Simon Wiesenthal Center, named after the famed Nazi hunter, have sought records related to unofficial escape routes taken by thousands of Nazis the years after World War II. Up to 10,000 Nazis and other fascist war criminals escaped justice by fleeing to Argentina and other countries. While some previous leaders promised full cooperation to get to the hard truths that involved Argentina's past, Milei is the first to act with lightning speed to enable the SWC, the Simone Wiesenthal Center, to uncover important pieces of the historic puzzle, especially as it related to involvement with Nazis before, during, and after the Holocaust, unquote, Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean of the Simone Wiesenthal Center, told the Times of Israel. During the Simone Wiesenthal Center meeting on Tuesday, Jonathan Meissner, managing partner at Stein, Mitchell, Beto, and Meissner, brought a letter from the U.S. Senator Charles Grassley, chairman of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. The letter, listen closely, folks. The letter, which was hand-delivered to Milei, requested the Argentinian leader's assistance in recovering how the ratlines were organized and funded. A copy of the letter was sent to U.S. President Donald Trump. Now I'm skipping again. Quote, "These files will be instrumental in obtaining justice, which is instrumental to honoring the memory of those who suffered and died in the Holocaust," said Cooper, "especially in a post-October 7th world. Those who financed, facilitated, or otherwise assisted these ratlines must be held accountable." Skipping all the way to the bottom paragraph. President Milei is a staunch ally of the global Jewish community and was eager to open these archives. He knows that confronting Argentina's history of Nazi collaboration requires nothing less than full transparency, and the same principle undergirds his pursuit of justice for the AMIA bombing, close quote, said Meissner. And that's the article. Now, there's all sorts of speculations I want to advance here. And I'm going to try and focus on two major points. Number one, the focus in the article, according to the article, is how the Nazi ratlines were organized and funded. And then the second is the reference to the post-October 7th attacks from last year. In other words, after all of these years, we're almost 80 years now after the end of World War II. So, after all of these years, why again is this story surfacing? And the first hint that there's something massively wrong, in my opinion, and I've written several books on what I've called the Nazi International, which basically, in my view, was a post-war, and please listen carefully, a post-war extraterritorial state with its own system of finance, its own chain of command, its organization, and even secret research projects and covert operations. And this entity, in my opinion, has grown very powerful and has been in existence since the end of World War II. If you want to find an answer to the question why certain countries in the world seem to look increasingly fascist and their political leaders are increasingly nuts, dig no further than this idea. So the reference to how these ratlines were organized and funded should tell us two very carefully and closely analyzed things. It should tell us two very important things if you analyze the implications of that statement closely. Number one, they don't know in toto how those ratlines to this day were organized. Now, I've attempted to uncover a lot of it in my books, and in particular reference to, to Nazi Reichsleiter Martin Bormann, and in my opinion, his probable escape to Latin America, along with some other very important people. So in other words, the low management people like Eichmann and so on that you find referenced in this article are barely scratching the surface. If we do not know how all of these rat lines were organized and funded, how is this vast logistical operation set up? If we don't know that, then the second point that emerges from that is that the post-war American claim, particularly, to have recovered a significant, if not all, of the amount of those Nazi funds that were looted from Europe and then laundered overseas, simply is not true. A lot of those funds, as I've tried to argue in my books, escaped notice and are probably still there on the books with somebody, pardon me, who has access to those accounts. And this is why the investigation is being done now, because somebody is trying to recover those funds in the wake of the October 7th attacks. So let's go to the second point here, the reference to October 7th and those attacks on Israelis by Hamas. What this suggests to me, and you can kind of read this article, I'll enclose the reference to the Senate Judiciary Committee article so that you can read it for yourself. What the article implies is that there's some sort of organizational and financial link between this post-war Nazi International and the post-war organization that governs the Palestinian state called Hamas, which is pretty much on everybody's terrorism watch list, and most people think is a creature of Iran. So in other words, the connections here, the implied connections, begin to get very murky and very diabolical in their nature. And the other thing that the post-October 7th reference seems to imply is that not only are they trying to recover those funds and unravel a post-war terrorist network with possible connections to the Nazi International. And again, that Nazi terrorism network I also have written about in my books, particularly in the book The Nazi International, in the book The Third Way, and so on. They are trying to recover these funds, in my opinion, for the so-called development of the Gaza Strip, in line with all of these other reports that we've heard of transporting that entire population out of Palestine and simply seizing the land and territory for themselves. And they're going to need a lot of funds and money to do that. So something is going on here, folks. And it's very nasty as far as I'm concerned. And it speaks to the fact that whatever is going on, this hypothesis of a post-war fascist or Nazi international is somehow still there. It's still functioning, and it's still active on the world stage in ways that we can't even begin to fathom. But by tracing the money, they're hoping to unravel the network. This is what I think is going on, or at least implied by this, actually not so sudden, but by this interest in Nazi funds in Argentina and so on. At the minimum, what all of this suggests is that those funds are still there. And someone has access and control of those accounts. And that someone is not likely to be any of the intelligence or service agencies of the world powers. So they're trying to unravel a network by tracking the funds. And that's, folks, that's huge with implications. We know of the Nazi connections to the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem and so on and so forth during World War II. Pardon me. So we know that those connections existed during the war. What this article is suggesting is they didn't keep up with how that network grew and blossomed after the war. Now, if you check in my books, folks, for those of you who don't believe these things are true, get a hold of my books, please. And you will discover references in the Nazi International and in the book The Third Way to the post-World War II so-called terrorist summit that was held in Madrid under the auspices of Nazi commando Otto Skorzeny. And that's a huge little nest of connections right there. I believe, pardon me, it was not Madrid, it was Barcelona. But there's a huge network of connections there that fan out from Spain all over the world. The other place to look, my friends, is Taiwan, believe it or not. So we'll see where Chairman Grassley's investigation takes us. This is one to watch carefully. My bet is that we're not going to be told everything that they uncover, for the simple reason that America and Canada and the United Kingdom are also involved in these Nazi ratline operations. So that's it. Don't forget, we do not have a vid chat tomorrow. Our next vid chat will be a week from tomorrow, but please remember to keep checking the schedule for the vid chats. So that's it for today and today's news and views. Bye-bye, everybody. Good luck. God bless. And we'll see you on the flip side.